What's up, fight fans? This is episode 6 of Anchored Aggression. I'm Brett Cagle, joined by Anthony Ballister. We're going to break down the Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura card that happened yesterday, and also look at some breaking news surrounding UFC 301. Do you want to get into the news first, Anthony?
Yeah. We can start out with the breaking news. Obviously, they announced that UFC 301, either the main event or the co-main event, is going to be Pantoja defending the flyweight title against Steve Erceg. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've talked about Erceg for the last couple episodes, and he's really massively potentialed at 125 pounds, ranked 10th right now. He jumped the line in front of guys like Manel Kape, Brandon Royval, and others who really wanted that title opportunity. But, his potential can't be denied. He just knocked out Matt Schnell. He's also got multiple submission wins on his record as well, so he's multi-talented. They kind of want a new face-to-face Alexandre Pantoja, so he can get a new opponent. And I think that Erceg, this is his time. He's really coming on at this point. I do think that, to be honest, his level of competition might not warrant him a title shot thus far, but he's looked tremendous every time he's been out there. Beat Dvorak in his UFC debut, and then came in and obviously knocked Matt Schnell out, who's a respected contender. So, Steve Erceg's looked good on the feet. He's got a good jab power in his hands, and he also has submissions. I like his potential, but I just hope he's not getting rushed, and then we run into one of these opportunities like we've talked in the past where it kind of derails a guy's career because it's too much too soon. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, but I'm really interested in the fight. It's one of the most compelling flyweight title fights to me in a really long time. They're really making a push for this guy, and they think they might have a star in Steve Erceg, so it really intrigues me a lot.
Yeah, I would sum up this matchup for the UFC as maybe not the most deserving, but maybe the most exciting. I think Steve Erceg is definitely well-rounded. We've seen, how great his striking can be. He definitely has some skills on the ground. So, yes, it may not be the most deserving. We said, maybe Albazi could be no more deserving, maybe even a rematch for Brandon Royval or Muhammad Mokaev. But Steve Erceg may give us the most exciting fight. And if he goes out there and shocks everybody, that's going to be very awesome for the UFC. And with him being so well-rounded, it makes more sense. I think maybe at this point he could probably give Pantoja a tougher fight than Mokaev, because Mokaev is kind of one-dimensional with just the grappling and not the striking, where Erceg is well-rounded everywhere it goes. So I think this is definitely very exciting. I just don't think it's the most deserving.
Yeah, and it's really biting off a lot to chew for Erceg here. Going into the champion's native country, he's going to have to take the belt from him at home in front of that Brazilian crowd that gets really raucous. They start chanting, you will die and stuff as people will go to the ring in Portuguese, and they really back their native countrymen. So it's going to be a tough task for him to go in there and take the belt home with him. But if he can live up to the potential and the hype that Dana White and these guys have put on him and really pushed and promoted him with this, he's going to go down as one of the best champions we've had at flyweight. Because if you knock off a guy in Alexandre Pantoja in your first title opportunity like that, it really says a lot about you, in my opinion. And I think they're really banking on a new star at 125 pounds.
Yeah, and obviously this fight's exciting, so I'm not too upset that they went this direction. It does make the rest of the matchmaking in the flyweight division very difficult, because it was pretty clear that Albazi should have been the next title shot holder, and then you had Mokaev and Royval as the next two guys that maybe find the number one contendership. Now having, Steve Erceg fast-tracked into this position, it's tough to see where they're going to go. Now maybe does Albazi and Mokaev fight a number one contendership match, given that Royval just had the most recent title shot? I would say that would make the most sense. Even though he's coming off of a win against Moreno, I would say I'd give Albazi and Mokaev a number one contendership match. But unfortunately, because they went with Steve Erceg, one of those three guys is going to get left out in the picture, and that's just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that you have to throw Brandon Moreno. He's always in there. We've talked about this before. There's about 6 guys, I think, that are title worthy at 125 pounds. And if they can get them going against one another, it's going to be really entertaining for fight fans on some of these fight night cards and pay-per-views. I like what you said with the matchups that you put out there. I think that Brandon Royval is someone that certainly deserves a high opportunity. If he fought Amir Albazi or if he fought Muhammad Mokaev for a title eliminator, I think that would be just. At the same time, Brandon Moreno, a former champion, he's going to need someone to fight too. I would like to see maybe him fight a Manel Cape, or I think that'd be a perfect fight for him. He's either going to get back into title contention with that win, or Manel would finally get the name that he needs on his resume to be recognized with casual fight fans. So there's 125 is the best shape that it's ever been, in my opinion, and the deepest that it's ever been. We talked about Demetrius Johnson dominating it for years. And I just like that there's so many guys at 125 pounds with different skill sets that are so entertaining to watch.
Yeah, and I know they announced another fight unrelated to UFC 301, but for flyweight, they announced that they're going to have Manel Cape going up in a rematch against Matthias Nicolou. So that's definitely great. I'm glad they're going in that direction, because I said before, a few weeks ago, that I would like to see Manel Cape revenge that one loss, and then I'll really take him seriously as a title contender. If he gets that one loss, he's going to be right in there with those guys, as you said. But 301 is definitely going to be a very exciting card. They're going to add another fight that's going to be pretty big. It's either going to be the main event or the co-main event. But they already announced we get Jose Aldo coming back out of retirement. He's going to be fighting in bantamweight again. He's going up against one of the young up-and-coming risers, and Jonathan Martinez. I think Martinez is a young killer in this division, and I think this fight's going to be very exciting. And what are your thoughts on Jose Aldo coming back?
Yeah, what just a turn of events for Jose Aldo. It really reminds you of Randy Couture or someone like that who came back after post-retirement getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. It's going to be awesome to hear Bruce Buffer announce him as UFC Hall of Famer, Jose Aldo, and former champion. For him to compete one more time in front of his native hometown fans, like we were talking about with Pantoja, I'm sure that means a lot to him, and is probably a main reason why he came back in this matchup. I don't know if he necessarily thinks he's got another push for the title in him right now, but I think that he wanted to compete one more time, probably in front of family and friends in Brazil, against someone that he maybe could have an opportunity against. But at the same time, Jonathan Martinez is a tough customer. We've seen him on the feet just damage guys with leg kicks, but we've also seen that be the game plan for Jose Aldo at times too. So I think that we've got an interesting striking battle here that's going to take place at UFC 301, and I can't wait to see Jose Aldo back in there. I don't know how much he's been training or how active he's been in the gym. I'll be checking out his Instagram leading up to the pay-per-view event for sure, but I hope that he's giving it a full effort, and I think it's going to be a good matchup.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see a guy of his caliber, all-time great, one of the greatest to ever do it, come back and fight. I just don't want to see him come back and have one of these young guys, really hurt him. Like I said, I don't like seeing older guys come back and get destroyed and have that be our last memory. But hey, if he comes out there and can beat a young killer like this, a lot of props to him. They also announced, we do got Michelle Pereira going up against Makad Murdoch. For Pereira, I just don't understand what he has to do to get a ranked middleweight opponent. He's on a 7-fight win streak. I really like his skills. I think he did want to rush this fight. He said in his last win that he really wanted to fight in Brazil on 301. So I think maybe it was just bad timing. Maybe there wasn't another ranked middleweight to fight. And he just wants to go in there and fight for Brazil, and then maybe probably win that, move it to 8-win streak, probably fight a ranked guy at the end of the year. And then obviously, we got Vitor Petrino going up against Anthony Smith. Just like we predicted, we thought that's where they were going to go. That's who Petrino called out. Two great strikers, one old, one young. What are your thoughts on those two fights?
Yeah, so for the Michelle Pereira fight, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'd like to see him fight someone with more of a name that has a ranking behind him, so he can move himself up the rankings towards a title shot. He certainly deserves that opportunity and notoriety. It seems to me like they consistently are throwing him guys that are very tough opponents, but might not necessarily have a big name. Like when he just fought Oleg Chajik, many people don't know who that is, but as we saw in that fight, for as long as it lasted, he is a tough competitor. So he's taking on Muradov in this one, another guy who kind of flies under the radar but is highly talented. So we'll see how he does in Brazil.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then we get a banger of a matchup in the middleweight. We get Paul Craig going up against Caio Baralho. I love Baralho. I think he's one of the most promising fighters in the middleweight. And I really think he's got a potential to maybe go on a title run. Maybe even not win the title, but at least contend for the title. He's on a nice win streak, and I think he's one of the best young coming fighters in UFC.
Yeah, I like what you said there. I'd certainly like to see his matchup against some of the wrestlers in the middleweight division as we look at some of the young prospects like Bo Nickel and Khamzat Chimaev that are, at 185 pounds. Baralo might have an interesting stylistic matchup for those guys being so credentialed on the ground in jiu-jitsu. But, as far as Paul Craig's concerned, I hope that this matchup really shows us what Baralo can do on the feet. Because as I was just talking about with him against the wrestlers in Bo Nickel and Khamzat Chimaev, Paul Craig might also have to force Baralo to stand with him. Also that Craig is so good on the ground. So it's not going to be, easy traffic if Baralo goes for a takedown and tries to find a submission because, Paul Craig's very sneaky in his own right with his grappling. So I'd like to see maybe what Baralo's got on the feet. We haven't really seen that get tested so far in his career. Kind of with Jailton Almeida, a similar situation with Curtis Blades. Finally goes against a grappler, and then we have to see what he has on the feet. Doesn't really have too much. I'd really like to see what Baralo has. I know he's built that Fight Nerds team down there with a couple other guys like Kratos, who just got a win in the UFC. And he's building his own team with training partners there and people he's coaching. So he's dedicated to the sport, and I like his potential, like you said. But I'd like to see what he's got with his hands a little bit in this matchup.
Yeah, 100% agree. This is definitely going to be a true test for him. I think if he could, ace this test and go out there and do good against Paul Craig, I think we're definitely going to be seeing him fight someone within the top 10 of the division. And I think he'll start getting some more notoriety as an up-and-comer in that division. So now, we finally get to the UFC Fight Night card. Obviously, we're going to start off with the main event. We had Marcin Tybura, winning against Tai Tuivasa. In the preview video, you predicted this exactly how it went. So, what were your thoughts on this fight?
Well, I really thought that the alarming when I go back and look at these guys' records before the fight and try and break down who I think is going to win and how, what stuck off the page to me in this one was Tai Tuivasa losing in his last fight to Alexander Volkov by submission. And anybody who's seen Volkov fight, he's predominantly a striker. He's 6'7" and a very good technical kickboxer, but he's not known for his submissions on the ground. So when he was able to get Tai Tuivasa to tap out, then I thought maybe Tybura, being an even better grappler coming into that fight with 6 submissions, if he could get the fight to the ground, I don't think Tai Tuivasa is going to make it 25 minutes. All he's got to do is avoid the heavy punches early of Tuivasa and take him down, and Tuivasa will probably tire out and eventually be worn into a submission or ground and pound victory. I kind of got lucky. He ended up winning by submission. But, yeah, I really liked Tybura in that matchup. And, Tuivasa did almost get him out of there in the first minute. He caught him with a big elbow and actually bloodied him. He was bleeding above the eye for a little bit. So Tybura had to go through a little bit of adversity. But, yeah, being the dominant grappler and superior grappler is kind of where I hedged my money in my prediction with this one.
Yeah, I was very disappointed in Tuivasa. Obviously, he knew coming into this, if he was going to win, he was going to have to win early. He did exactly what we did in the beginning. He obviously hurt Tybura at the beginning. But pretty much after that moment, it was pretty much all Tybura. He got the takedown. He was pretty much ground and pounding him. And then he got the chokehold and put him to sleep. Unfortunately for Tai Tuivasa, he really needed this win. He doesn't look the same coming off that knee injury. Huge losing streak now. I don't know where he goes from here. He might just have to start fighting guys outside the rankings. But who knows if he's ever going to return from that injury and ever be the same fighter that he used to be. But he looks like a shell of the self that he used to be. And I just think for him, I don't know where he can go. On the flip side for Tybura, he looked great. Given his age at 38, he's not going to go on no title run or nothing. But I definitely think he could go up with the rankings a little bit and challenge some of these guys inside the top 10. I would like to see him fight another guy who's a good grappler. Honestly, I would like to see him fight a guy like Jailton Almeida, a guy who's coming off of a loss, who's kind of going in the opposite direction. I think that would be a perfect matchup for where both guys are headed in their direction.
Absolutely. I think that's the perfect matchup for Tybura. We're going to see, force Almeida once again to go against a grappler and see what he has on the feet. You know, Almeida's gotten to that point in his career where, you know, he's in the Shark Tank now, and he's going to have to, you know, either it's sink or swim. So throw him to another grappler, make him go into that stylistic disadvantaged matchup, and let's see what he's got standing on the feet. But Tybura is not like, you know, some dominant striker either. So we'll see. I like that matchup a lot. Two grapplers that need a win to stay in the UFC top 10. I like that one a lot. But for Tuivasa, like you were saying, I don't know where he's going to go in his career. I honestly thought he might retire after the fight. One name really stuck out for me. I don't know how many fights he's got left in the UFC, but I want to see him fight one guy, and that's Rodriguez-Issac, who we saw get an 18-second win in his UFC debut last weekend. I want to see Despain get in there against anybody with a name, anybody with a ranking, anybody who's a striker. I know it's going to be fireworks. Tai Tuivasa is not sitting around waiting for anything. He's trying to go in there for a knockout early. Same thing with Despain. Let's throw these two guys in there. It's not going to get out of 2 minutes. You know, that's the matchup I want for Tuivasa, and I like the one you put out for Tybura.
Yeah, that's a great matchup for Tuivasa, exactly where he's going. And it would be crazy because it's two guys that we normally don't like to see the fight go on for too long. So it'd be interesting to see if that fight went on, you know, longer than one round, you know, how that fight would dictate. So that would be definitely very exciting. Yeah, I think that's a great pick for him. So now we have our co-main event. We have Bryan Battle going up against, you know, Andre Loosa. Obviously, this was definitely very disappointing. You know, I definitely thought Bryan Battle won the first round. Thought he was on his way to win the second round. Unfortunately, he poked Loosa's eye. Obviously, that definitely had to hurt. Definitely need the timeout. But I think the fight shouldn't have been called off. I think the fight could have gone on. And I definitely think maybe there was some sort of, you know, Loosa being scared to continue to fight. I think he knew he was heading in the direction of another loss. And I think to save that loss, he called the fight and, you know, acted like he couldn't continue.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. And the one word for this one's frustrating because we really wanted to see what Bryan Battle had. He'd only lost to Renat Fakhretdinov, like we were talking about before this one in the UFC, and that guy's 21-1. So, you know, Battle had won an Ultimate Fighter season, and, you know, he came in there and looked good. He was picking them apart from distance and was really doing, you know, what Bryan Battle does when he's successful and using his length and putting volume on him. And Loosa is an athletic guy. He was going in there and trying his best in the early rounds, but it seemed like he was loading up for one shot at a time, throwing heavy punches at him, and seemed to be, you know, losing the fight and losing more of it as the fight went on. And he realized where it was going. When the foul occurred, you know, he did get hit with the headbutt coming up, and I'm not going to say he didn't get hit. You can't force somebody to fight, though. When you're the doctor, you're kind of put in a bad situation when the guy says, I can't see. You can't force him to see or force him to want to get back in there. The thing that really stuck out to me, though, was after the fight when they called it a no contest. Loosa perked up and looked like he was ready to fight again against Battle, but 20 seconds before, when the doctor was asking if you wanted to fight, you couldn't see. But then when Bryan Battle's in front of you talking, you know, crap, then you want to get tough again. And it's like Battle's talked about that with Michael Bisping in his post-fight interview, and I thought that was very interesting and, you know, odd.
Yeah, I thought so too, because it doesn't make much sense. If he could continue after the stoppage, how was he able to not continue during the fight when the doctor was asking him? Yeah, I was kind of, you know, shocked at that. I think Bryan Battle called him out for that in the post-fight interview. Now, just to be clear, was it an eye poke and a headbutt? Was it a combination of both, or was it just the head connecting?
So I think that originally it was this, that he, like the back of Battle's head, I believe, nicked his eyebrow, and then I believe Battle stuck his hand out to gauge distance, and then eventually got that thumb in there as well. So okay. I think it was a little bit of both, and, you know, the one that everybody saw on TV was the eye poke, and that was certainly the one that was more obvious. But that when they separated from the clinch, it looked like Battle's head also grazed either his eyebrow or his eyelid, and then, you know, as he was gauging distance, you know, the thumb went in the eye as well. So, I mean, you know, it couldn't have felt good for Ange Loosa. In his career, he's not a guy who historically is quitting in fights or not giving full effort. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt this first time, I'd have to say.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I saw the eye poke, and then when they were showing the slow motion replay, I saw the little bit of the heads connecting. But yeah, honestly, for Brian Battle, I really feel bad for him. This would have been an important win for him. If he would have, got this win, even if it would have been by unanimous decision, he'd probably be looking at a ranked opponent. And honestly, I feel like for him, he shouldn't be punished for this. I think for him, I think Brian Battle should either get an immediate rematch, whether if that's next week or 2 weeks from now. Obviously, we got some fight nights coming up. Let them rematch, or let Brian Battle go and fight a ranked opponent as if he was going to win, because we all pretty much know he was probably going to win the fight anyways. So I either think give him an immediate rematch or let Brian Battle fight a ranked opponent as if he did win this matchup.
Yeah, I think that you have to rematch him. Battle came into this one not even a 2-1 betting favorite. When he goes into this next fight, if it does get rematched in a week or two, he'll probably be as big as like a 4-1 betting favorite. So, we saw what happened. He was able to use his length and really outpoint Loosa and get ahead in the fight. So I don't think there's any surprise, where the odds would be in a rematch.
Yeah. Like I said, honestly, in my opinion, I would love for him to get a rematch. It's just hopefully Loosa is not too scared to do an immediate rematch. And I just don't want Brian Battle being delayed a potential ranked opponent because Loosa doesn't want to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Loosa should either have to fight here in the next, month. I'm not saying to put it on 301 or anything. I don't know if it's deserving for, a pay-per-view fight. But if Loosa wants to get back in here on one of these fight night cards, he certainly should get back in there. And then, if he doesn't want to answer the bell here in the next 2 weeks, then Brian Battle should, be able to move on and go into fight somebody in contention.
Yeah, 100%. Now our next fight, we got St. Preux versus Kenny Nzechuku. In my opinion, I thought this was the fight of the night. I thought both fighters brought it out. I was pretty surprised. I thought this was going to be Pruitt's retirement party. I thought he was going to lose, and this would be the last we'd see of him. But I was absolutely wrong. We'll definitely be seeing him in the octagon again. But yeah, this was definitely a brawl. I gave rounds 2 and 3 to St. Preux. I thought Nzechuku won round 1. So I had it 29-28 St. Preux. But, man, what a brawl this was. What a great fight it was. Fight of the night, in my opinion. And I thought the third round was absolutely insane. But how did you see it?
Yeah, it was certainly the closest fight of the night. And that third round was competitive and insane. Kennedy got knocked down in the first minute of that third round, but then fought back so well after getting knocked down. And he really put it on St. Preux there towards the end of the third round. I had it scored the same as you, though. I had it 2-1 for St. Preux. I had Kennedy winning round 1. I had St. Preux winning a very close round 3 due to the early knockdown. And then, kind of trying to hold his own there towards the end of the bell, but they were slugging it out. It was, a great fight. If you guys haven't seen it, go back and watch it on ESPN+. But, Kennedy did everything he could to win that third round after getting knocked down, but St. Preux, survived, and I had him winning those 2 rounds. I thought the second round for St. Preux was probably the easiest round to score. I thought the first for Kennedy still, even though I gave it to him, I thought that there was an argument for St. Preux maybe even winning that first round as well. So I thought Ovince St. Preux put on one of the best performances of the second part of his career here as a veteran fighter. He entered the fight as a 5-1 betting underdog, and certainly made whoever bet on him a lot of money this weekend. It was a great performance by him. We'll be seeing him again here in the future, so hats off to him with this one.
Yeah, I said coming into this fight, I thought this was going to be the easiest fight to pick. I thought it was going to be the most one-sided. But hey, St. Preux proved me wrong. Obviously he gets to continue his career in UFC. But for Kennedy, even worse than what we saw with Tuivasa. I don't know where Kennedy's going to go from here. He's not even being able to beat unranked older opponents. This was kind of, propped up for him to win this victory and get back on track. But, he's definitely going to, drop down the rankings. Obviously, he's not ranked, but he was looked at a guy maybe just outside the rankings. But that's probably not the case anymore. And I just don't know where he goes from here at all.
Yeah, this is absolutely, worst case scenario for the Kennedy Nzechuku team. And I don't know either, because now you're looking at maybe being one fight away from getting cut. You can't go in there and get it done against a guy who you're a 6-1 favorite against, and is getting up there close to 40 years old. And what are you going to be expected to do here? You got outstruck by 40 strikes. I thought his defensive movement was awful in this fight. His head movement wasn't up to par. He wasn't moving out of the. I thought slow strikes of St. Preux. St. Preux certainly was faster earlier in his career. He's an incredible athlete, but he's not in the same physical prime that he once was when he made his first title run, and he was still able to go out there and do whatever he wanted with Kennedy, which I thought was quite alarming. And, he's maybe 1 or 2 losses away from no longer being in the UFC, which you don't want to really say about anybody, but that was a very bad loss.
Yeah, 100%. And now another fight that was, could also be fight at night. We had Christian Rodriguez and Isaac Bulgarian. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, this was my fight of the night. Rodriguez ends up winning this one, but I got to be honest with you, I didn't have it for him. I thought that the early ground control of Bulgarian, and we kind of had this one wrong. We thought Bulgarian was going to come in here and be the superior striker, and in the first round he did rock Rodriguez and then take him down. But it seemed like Bulgarian weared himself down with the grappling in the constant takedown attempts and top pressure and control. Rodriguez really tried to transition through the stuff in the first round, but was controlled for almost 4 minutes in that first round. I had the first round 10-8 for Bulgarian. I had the second round 10-9 for Bulgarian, and I had the third round 10-8 for Rodriguez. So a very interesting scorecard there. You don't normally see 10-8s from both fighters in one fight. But Bulgarian put it on him early, then gassed out, and Rodriguez was able to take over in that third round and almost find a victory for himself. I can't believe that Rodriguez's coaches weren't telling him that he needed that finish in that third round. Even though he ended up coming away with the split decision win, I thought that it was too close to call there, and it seemed like he was just going to the end of the bell. I thought that was really too close for Rodriguez to play it off like that. But I had the fight for Bulgarian. If you look at the statistics here on ESPN, 9 minutes of control time in a 15-minute fight, 9 minutes and 22 seconds for Bulgarian in this one. I don't know how you lose a fight when you have 9 minutes of control time. But I'd like to hear your opinion on it, Anthony. Am I missing something?
No, honestly, I agree with everything you said. Coming into this fight, like we said, we thought Bulgarian was the better striker. We thought Rodriguez would be the better grappler, and it was pretty much the opposite. I thought Bulgarian was going to win the fight, and you thought Christian Rodriguez was going to win the fight. It was a fight that could definitely go either way. But I thought Bulgarian definitely won the first 2 rounds. And if you wanted to give one of those a 10-8, I don't have no problem with that. Obviously, Christian Rodriguez clearly won the third round. If you want to give that a 10-round 8 for Christian Rodriguez, I completely agree. But honestly, I had this 29-28 Bulgarian. And, it's unfortunate because he was undefeated, so he loses his undefeated streak. But honestly, I would like to see these guys fight again. I think the fight was too close to just sit there and say, okay, well, I guess Rodriguez should fight a ranked opponent. No, I think this fight was too close to call. And I honestly think Bulgarian kind of got robbed a little bit. And I would love for them to see him run it back.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and it certainly was entertaining. I know there was a lot of grappling in this contest, but the transitions from these two guys, I found entertaining. I like watching some of the grappling on the ground. It wasn't like Bulgarian was constantly riding on Rodriguez. Rodriguez was working back up to his feet. And I thought it was surprising to me that Bulgarian was able to get Rodriguez to the ground so easily, since Rodriguez just went against Raul Rosas Jr. a few fights ago and, was able to stop his takedown attempts so effectively. When I saw that was the game plan for Bulgarian, I was like, oh man, Rodriguez might have a chance in this one. But, Bulgarian really went out there and put takedowns on him. But, you also had the fight scored for Bulgarian. 2 of the best judges in the sport, Sal D'Amato and Ron McCarthy, Big John McCarthy's son, scored the fight for Rodriguez. How did you see this fight getting scored for Rodriguez? I don't know how you could have given him anything but the third round in this one.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Obviously, the 10-8s in the third round and the first round kind of, cancel each other out. So it pretty much comes down to that second round. But I thought Bulgarian won the round, definitely. I guess, the only thing you can say is maybe Christian Rodriguez did the more damage. I think Bulgarian was the fighter that was more beat up at the end. So, a lot of, guys like, score fights on that. Who's caused the most damage? And a lot of times when you're controlling fight, you're kind of just stalling the fight. You're not really doing much damage, and a lot of guys don't like that. And that's why a lot of those guys don't get the benefit of the doubt. So I think because Rodriguez did more damage, maybe that's why some guys wanted to favor towards him. So I'm not too mad that they went with Rodriguez, but I was definitely a little shocked and thought they should have went with Bulgarian. But honestly, I don't see how you cannot rematch these guys because it was really that close. And, for it to go the opposite way of everybody expected with the striking and grappling, it would be interesting to see what these guys are doing in a rematch and to see if their game plans to switch in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And for as dominant as Bulgarian was early with that ground control that we're talking about, Rodriguez nearly did have him finished in that third round and had him in a really bad spot for multiple minutes. Bulgarian was looking up at the clock, seeing how much time he had left to survive the barrage of Rodriguez as Rodriguez was on top of him in full mount. So, I'd like to see this fight again, like you were saying. It was competitive and entertaining. I think you could even move it up to a main card spot on one of these fight night cards. With how these fight night cards are looking going forward, that certainly would be just. So, great fight from those two guys. And like you said, it's my fight of the night.
Yeah, and I think you can either pick that one or the Kenny and St. Preux fight. But either one, those two were definitely the clear fights of the night. And then, another fight that we want to speak about, the last fight on the main card, was, Gerald Meerschaert going up against Bryan Barbera. This fight went exactly how me and you predicted it would go. Barbera landed a couple good strikes here and there, but Meerschaert, he got the takedown the first, pretty much controlled the fight the rest of the round. And then pretty much the second round was all Meerschaert. He got the choke and got the sub to get the win. All credit to, Barbera for not tapping and, going to sleep. That definitely takes a lot of guts and will and shows, how bad he wants to win. But, the old man Meerschaert gets back on the win column, and I think he's still a good test. I think he's still a good gatekeeper for a lot of these young middleweights. I think, if you're a middleweight and if you could beat him, you should be fighting a ranked opponent. If you can't beat him, then I think you need to go back to a drawing board. I think he's that perfect first step. We've seen like a Joe Pfeiffer and a Hamzat. I think he's that good first step before you fight a ranked middleweight. And, he's not a tough fight. He's definitely going to be a tough bout for any of these young guys. And it was great to see him get back in the win column.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. We were talking about how gatekeeper is thought of as a negative term in boxing and maybe other sports, but in the UFC, some of these guys make a living off being a gatekeeper and have great careers off it. You think about the Cowboy Cerrones, guys like that. Gerald Meerschaert's not quite on that level. Like you said, he's a first step of maybe that entry into a top 15 ranking potentially. But I got to tell you, Bryan Barbera looks awful at middleweight. He was never in the best condition at welterweight. He's not one of these guys that is a physical specimen. And when he moves up to middleweight, all I think that is to me is that he's drinking more beer, eating more pizza, and training less. Because it doesn't look like he's more, like he's hitting the weight room more and he's putting on 15 more pounds of solid muscle. The body doesn't look great at 185 pounds. It wasn't like it was fantastic at 170 pounds, even though he was in good shape in that Robbie Lawler fight and some others that he put on great wars in. He's a competitive game fighter, and he's always down to throw. No one's saying anything about his heart or his toughness, but as far as him being competitive in these fights, I think he's got to move back down to welterweight or maybe go try somewhere else, because you can't just getting a win in the UFC is so hard. And when you're trying to get a win at a weight class that's not naturally yours, it's darn near impossible. You go back and look at Johnny Hendricks after Johnny Hendricks lost the title, and he had to move up in weight. And his body looked very similar to what Bryan Barberena's looked like last night. And they threw him in there with Paulo Costa, which wasn't a great matchup for Johnny Hendricks. And eventually that's going to happen here with Bryan Barberena if he doesn't watch out. The next guy coming at middleweight is going to get thrown to him in one of these fight night cards, and that's not how you want your career to end. So if I was advising him, I'd tell him to move back down to welterweight. But for Gerald Meerschaert, I thought it was a good win. And, would you like to see him fight Joe Pyfer? Joe Pyfer just lost to Jack Hermanson. kind of a poor man's Jack Hermanson is Gerald Meerschaert. He's good on the ground and tricky, just like Jack. Doesn't quite have the natural athletic ability that Jack does on the feet with the jab and the movement. But I'd like to see that matchup. As I said, I think he's kind of a poor man's Jack Hermanson, and that'd be a good one.
Yeah, the only thing is I think Joe Pfeiffer kind of won that fight pretty decisively. So I would like to see maybe Gerald Meerschaert fight another 185er that's up and coming. Maybe not Joe Pfeiffer because I
forgot he knocked him out. What am I? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the the prelims, I like to shout out Mike Davis and Jamal Faleo. I thought they dominated their fights with early finishes. I would like to see both those guys, Mike Davis and Jamal Faleo, fight ranked opponents next. I thought the Danny Silva and the Calabao fight was one of the fights of the night, very close.
Who do you have winning that one?
I thought Danny Silva won it 2 rounds to 1, but it was very close. I think that one could have went either way. But he definitely looked good in his debut against a very, very tough opponent. I don't think he's ready for a ranked opponent yet, but I would like to see Danny Silva fight someone just outside of the featherweight rankings. And then I think finally, Diego Mosas had a great light kick to get a nice finish win. But is there any final thoughts that you want to see on the card before we head out of here?
Yeah, I thought Philo looked good against O'Day Osborne, getting that submission win. I thought that was a really good performance by him. I thought it was. What was your card rating as a whole here? I know it wasn't the most spectacular fight card. A lot of fights went to a decision. I watched it from beginning to end. I'll tell you, I think my rating was a 6.8.
Yeah, I was going to say about a 6.2, especially with the Bryan Battle fight. I was pretty disappointed in that. I give it about a 6.2. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. It was just kind of middle ground.
Yeah, I thought so too. What do you think about this one we got coming up next weekend? Any early thoughts on that fight card?
I think there's some early good fights. I think we got some fights with some great heavyweights. So I definitely think it's going to be an interesting card. And I definitely think just like this card, there's going to be a lot of young, unranked fighters that we're going to be talking about as household names pretty soon.
Yep. So thanks for joining us, fight fans. We'll be back on Wednesday breaking down the Rose Namajunas versus Amanda Ribas fight next weekend on the Fight Night card on ESPN Plus for the UFC. Any other breaking news or things that come out in the boxing or MMA world we'll also cover. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.